Okay, it is 1 o'clock. So I want to welcome everyone to our webinar, OurSpace World, Sowing Health, Building Community. My name is April Wright, and I am the Outreach Librarian with Region 1 of the Network of the National Library of Medicine, the NNLM. Our guest presenters today are Aida Amazie, Joy Howard, and Misty Tranell. Before I turn things over to them, here are a few things to help you get the most out of this experience. This webinar is being recorded, so it will be available on the NNLM YouTube channel in the next couple of weeks. Maybe sooner than that. We're happy to offer MLACEs for this class, and the evaluation link will be shared at the end. Our presenters will answer questions at the end. So please put your questions and comments in the chat and send them to everyone. Now a bit about the NNLM. The National Institutes of Health, the NIH, is the nation's leading medical research agency. The National Library of Medicine, NLM, is one of the 27 institutes and offices of the National Institutes of Health. It is the world's largest biomedical library and produces online resources like PubMed and Medline Plus. The NNLM is the network of the National Library of Medicine and is an outreach program of the NLM, working to ensure health professionals and the public have equal access to health information. It is made up of 7 regional medical libraries, 4 national centers, and 3 national offices. If you'd like to learn more about us or find your regional medical library, you can check our website at nnlm.gov. And here are the 7 geographic regions. We are in Region 1, which is based at the University of Maryland, Baltimore Health Sciences and Human Services Library, and we serve these states. Now, the NNLM provides funding for health outreach projects, free webinars and classes, and access to a network of public and academic libraries, community and faith-based organizations, and universities. NNLM Discovery is a new podcast launched by NNLM. These podcasts are available wherever you get your podcasts or on nnlm.gov/podcast. Now, our presenters. Aida Amazie is the Administrative Director of OurSpace World. She is a Black and Asian mother and mixed methods public health researcher who draws on years of experience as a grassroots organizer and a registered nurse, caring predominantly for Black patients in 2 Washington, D.C. emergency departments and in the largest federally qualified health center. She holds a BA in psychology from Princeton University with certificates in African American Studies and Neuroscience, a Master's of Public Health with certificates in Health Disparities and Health Communications, and a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from the Johns Hopkins University. And she is a PhD candidate at the University of Maryland School of Public Health. With an extensive background in public health and nursing focused on historically marginalized populations, she is deeply committed to health equity, food sovereignty, and building systems and partnerships that enable intergenerational thriving. Next, Joy Howard is founder of the In Bloom Collective, a grassroots effort of business owners, parents, volunteers, startups, and change makers with a shared vision for holistically healthy and thriving communities powered by climate-smart agriculture. Her passion for agriculture as a learning tool led to the co-founding of N-Sprout, where she is responsible for the efficiency and effectiveness of day-to-day operational activities and building strong relationships with organizations, local governments, and individuals that align with N-Sprout's mission and objectives. And finally, Misty Tranell serves as a research services librarian at the Gelman Library of the George Washington University, and she is a consulting librarian for this project. She works with the George Washington University's College of Professional Studies on behalf of the students, faculty, and staff. Prior to joining GW Libraries and Academic Innovation, Misty was a special collections librarian for the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. And now I am happy to stop sharing and turn it over to Aida.
Okay, can you all hear me and see my screen?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Welcome everyone. My name is Aita Amaiza. Like April said, I co-direct a small but expanding nonprofit here in Prince George's County called OurSpace World. Today we're gonna explain our project that's called Mirror Resources for Health, Food, and Environment. And the title of our talk today is Sowing Health and Building Community. I'm joined here by Joy Howard and Misty Trinnell. And before we dig into it, I just want to first welcome you and also call in my Aunt May into the space because she actually was a public librarian herself in New Jersey. It's been a few years since she transitioned, but I draw on her strength whenever I am thinking about books and learning materials for children, because she really had a heart for the community. And it wasn't until after she transitioned that I fully appreciated the role of libraries in a community. So I invite you also to do the same. Think of your esteemed elders or ancestors that you would like to call into this space as we move forward. As I present, you will see pictures that I've pulled from our various programming that relate to our farming work and education work. And this photo here is from our pilot summer program last summer, where we had 7 weeks of outdoor environmental stewardship programming. We had kids as young as 4 and as old as 15. And they came together for what we called Camp Earth Pact, which, and they built several garden beds together. And we were able to integrate our NNLM project into their work. So I'm excited to share all of this with you. Okay, so a brief rundown of where we're going to head today. I'm going to give you a background of why this project came together, why it was needed, how it came together, what we were able to create with funding from NNLM and their support, and then what's next, and open it up for question and answers. But feel free to type your questions in the chat as they arise, and we can answer them all as a collective later on. So the reason we decided to apply for this grant was actually, there's several reasons, but begin with, we already know you all, the folks that are here that are librarians or folks that are in healthcare or public health already know that there's plenty of data out there to support health disparities, many of which Black youth and families suffer disproportionate outcomes. And these statistics are well documented. According to the CDC, 13.8% of African Americans report fair or poor health, and 80% of Black women are overweight or obese, compared to only 8.3% of non-Hispanic whites and 64.8% of non-Hispanic white women. African Americans have the highest mortality rate for all cancers combined compared with any other racial or ethnic group, and there are 11 infant deaths per 1,000 live births among Black Americans, which is almost twice the national average. Per the CDC and Office of Minority Health, African Americans are more likely to die at early ages for all causes, as young African Americans are living with diseases that are typically more common at older ages for other races, putting them at generally higher risk for heart disease, stroke, cancer, asthma, influenza and pneumonia, diabetes, HIV and AIDS compared to their white counterparts. So essentially, the folks that look like me and come from communities like mine have challenges when it comes to health and mortality. So we wanted to address this in a way that had generational impact. In parallel, we have an issue in this society with representation in books and other learning materials. So this is an infographic from created using data from the University of Wisconsin-Madison's Cooperative Children's Book Center. Some of you may have seen these infographics. The idea here is that there are disproportionate amount of children's books that have representation across different racial and ethnic groups. So in the 2015 infographic here, you see 73.3% white, 12.5% are animals and trucks, and then 7.6% African Americans. And then the percentages keep getting smaller as you look at the other ethnic groups as well. So when these statistics came out and there was some news and articles written about them, there started to become more awareness around these topics. And so we have seen some improvement with more books by and about children of different ethnic groups. And so this is to the right is the infographic from 2018. And it has continued to change. And then as the data gets better, they've also collected more information on more categories. So you can see they added a Latinx category, disability, and then in 2021, LGBTQ as well. So the general idea here is that we need to do more to ensure that youth see themselves in the books that they read. And this is called curricular mirrors. In essence, the idea is that when you're learning about anything, if you can't see yourself in it, it's hard for you to relate to that subject matter. Esteemed Elder Marian Wright Edelman, who is an American activist for civil rights and the founder of the Children's Defense Fund, famously stated that you can't be what you can't see. And so we really wanted to address or begin to address this issue alongside what we know are challenges with health disparities among Black and Brown families. So that's our why. And I'm gonna now go into our how. So I really wanna focus on the timeline of this and how it came together, because the last round of this funding was released actually in June of 2021. But the connections that made this project possible were actually made back in January of 2021. So for those of you who are in the Mid-Atlantic region, you know that there is, or you might know, maybe not all of us know, Future Harvest is a nonprofit here that does a lot of farmer training for our Chesapeake beginning farmers and aspiring farmers. And so every January they have a conference, an annual conference, where they gather farmers together to talk about different issues that they face, anywhere from soil science to thinking about how to better market their products, to ways to connect with farm to school networks. So the topics are vast and broad, and that conference draws farmers, experienced and new, as well as community members who want to help farmers or support them in any way. So in January 2021 was the first time this conference was virtual because of the pandemic. And so this was also the first time I had attended this conference myself. And so at that conference, I met Joy Howard, who is a key member of this team here. And also we connected with April, not at the conference, but afterwards, because there was a Black farmer happy hour that folks attended, and then there was an email list that came out of that. And so after that conference, there was some emails that went back and forth on this listserv, informal listserv. And April began to post some funding opportunities on this listserv. And one of them was the NNLM Region 1 projects. And so before it even came out, she sent a message to us saying, hi, I work for NNLM and I had never heard of NNLM before. And she said, we have this funding opportunity you might be interested in. I had previously written onto the list to ask folks for letters of support because we had just decided to try for a federal grant. And she saw that email and she reached out. And so she said, this opportunity is coming out, later this month, maybe you should apply. And so, of course, I thought, well, how can we think about a library project that fits within our mission, and how do we do this? So, of course, I reached out to Joy, and she had a friend who was a librarian, and we started thinking about different ideas that might fit. And so when the application came out, we submitted an application. We actually didn't meet the deadline, but April said submit it anyway, and maybe they'll still read your application. So we were fingers crossed, thinking we probably wouldn't get this until the next round because our application was late. But the universe spoke, and we were selected, and we started the project in October of 2021. So that's the beginning of what we are continuing to build now here through this project. So in April 2022, we requested a no-cost extension because we had actually had some delays with our initial librarian. She had some family obligations, and we put out a call to see if another librarian could fill that role, and that's how we met Misty, who's also on the call here. So we finally were able to actually get the project underway. We submitted our final report in August. And in November, we actually met Misty for the first time in person. So that was really awesome. And then as we are moving into 2023, now we will continue to build on the progress of this project, which I'll share more on later. So the goals of our project were twofold. One was we wanted to increase and enhance national access to culturally relevant health information for Black youth around these topics that we care: food, health, and environment. And the secondary goal is to do the same, but on a local level. So on the national level, in the time of COVID, we decided it made the most sense to try to create an online library, essentially, that people could easily access and could find materials that were representative of the populations that they served around these topics: agriculture, farming, food, health, environmental justice. So the goal was to use NNLM resources to figure out what themes were most salient for our communities, and then figure out a user-friendly way to collate and categorize these materials so that homeschooling parents, teachers, librarians, such as yourselves, farmers, other folks could easily access these resources. The second part of the project involves building 5 health-focused little free libraries, which are kind of, they're lending libraries, essentially. You probably have maybe seen these in your communities, and we plan to put them at 5 of the partner farms in our network in the Mid-Atlantic, so spanning Maryland and Virginia, so that when children and families visit farms, whether it's to volunteer, whether it's to learn, whether it's to buy produce directly from farmers, they can also have access to these books that feature themselves and their family members as they learn about how farming and food relate to various aspects of their own health. So that was goal number 2. And so here now I'm going to jump into what we were able to create. So what we termed the online library, we call the eTeach22 Mirror Resources Library for Health, Food, and Environment. And the reason why it's eTeach22 is because part of our mission is to basically teach and support our own folks in Black diaspora so that they're 22nd century ready. So we know that we have several intersecting issues around climate change, climate justice, systemic racism, soil challenges. So there's all these challenges that we want to make sure that our youth understand, so that when they come of age, they're able to have an appreciation for the environment, and hopefully to begin or start to reverse some of the damages that humans have done to the earth. So that's why it's called Teach 22, and then it's E because it's electronic. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Misty, our librarian, who really did the heavy lifting here to identify all the resources that are in this library, which is a living library. And we'll talk about how you can add your resources to it. So I'm going to stop so that Misty can give us a demo.
All right, thank you, Ita. So from what I understand, I'm talking to mostly information professionals, so I won't give the long, drawn out demonstration that I had planned. But we do have that recorded for the general public so they can be familiar with how to search and navigate the full website. So to get started out, I just want to give a caveat that the library is mainly a discovery tool for mirror resources for health, food, and environment. It does have some features for people to be able to join the library and, save lists of resources and things they'd like to refer to later. But because we're using the light free version, we're not able to accommodate memberships for the library. So it's mainly for discovering resources that they can go out and find in other places. There are a lot of resources in here that I try to make sure are available in public libraries, our local public libraries in the area. So if they're in our local libraries, I'm sure they can be loaned in other areas as well. Um, so along with that, there are also resources in here that come directly from the National Library of Medicine. That was one of the main features that that had to be a part of this project in the library itself. So there are reference articles in here directly from PubMed and Medline Plus. And then also I incorporated some resources that are audio visual for children, video links and some audio links for children to be able to access directly from YouTube. So we wanted to make sure that things that are in here are accessible, available, and there are some low cost things that families will be able to find. They're from self-published authors. I think some of these resources from the self-published authors are probably some of the best and most appropriate for the audience that we're working, that we developed this for. But those things, families would have to purchase that if they're interested in. But again, most of those are appropriately priced, so families should be able to get those if they need it. So I want to give just a quick demonstration to show you what's in there. I'll put in a keyword here and show you some of the resources that we've collected so far. As Ita said, this is a living library. So as you recommend it to others or as you use it yourself, if you find things or you know of things that you think would be appropriate, please share them at the email address that's on the website. And then we will put these in there for you as well. So this is just a quick keyword that I put in, and you can see here that there's several resources available. The first one there is directly from the NNL, the National Library of Medicine website, probably from PubMed. I tried to make sure that I included thumbnails that were appropriate and that would catch the audience's attention and make them, be curious to look and see what it says. And then again, there are some self-published authors in here, some authors that you may not find in your local libraries, but again, within a library loan, most of these are accessible. So the second one is from a published author that's pretty popular within the African American community. So that would be one that most people would probably want to find through an interlibrary loan. And And then below here, you'll see one, Beano and Fino is probably popular to a lot of people that have children. And this is one of the audio-visual videos that you can pick up and watch from YouTube. So another caveat with this, again, because we're using the free version, the articles from the National Library of Medicine and the YouTube things that you'll find, we couldn't link directly to those sources because we're using the free version. But of course, as information professionals and librarians, I'm sure, you just tell people to copy and paste into their browser and they'll be able to find those, or go directly to the National Library of Medicine or PubMed and find the full articles that we have in here for reference. Let me just click one of the books here and then show you, that it gives a catalog record like you would see in any library, and full information about the item that we have here. And again, here are some links for purchasing if they're interested. But again, the main advantage of this is to find a title that's appropriate and then find it in a local library for no cost. So this one may be self-published, but again, it's one related directly to health and wellness. So I'll stop here. Again, I don't need to give the full demonstration to librarians and information professionals. And any other questions about it, I can take those after we wrap up. I'll stop sharing here.
Thank you, Misty. Appreciate you running through that with our audience here. And I believe Joy has put in the chat the direct links to this library as well as our project page for this project. I also wanted to share some photos of the children working on the Little Lending Library. So you can see here, because of the no-cost extension, we were able to incorporate this work into our summer programming. And so we had the children getting experience with power tools and calculating, right angles and cutting different panels of wood to make sure everything fit together. And this was a big lesson in teamwork. And they also, these hinges that you can see on the door of the library, the hinges and the actual handle came from Community Forklift, which is a secondhand tool and furniture store locally here. So it was a great way for the children to feel like a part of the process. And so once we finished these library builds, our librarian Misty was also able to suggest several of the titles from the online library to be purchased and featured inside these lending libraries. So we tried to find books that were written by Black authors and that covered a diverse age range and diverse topics. So when we install these at our partner farms later this year, children will already be able to read books that are featured inside the libraries. So that's really exciting. And on one of the last days of the summer program, we actually were able to invite a couple of authors who are local and also are aspiring farmers and seed savers here in our community. We were able to find their book, Fern and Ginger, which I'd never heard about it. And if it wasn't for this project, we wouldn't have known about. So the authors were able to come and read to the children and talk to them about seeds and the cultural relevance of saving seeds. So that was such a treat that came directly out of this project. And then now I want to transition us into thinking about what's next, how we're using the work of this project to inform the rest of our programming moving forward. And this picture to the left is our campers who are taking a tour of a local farm in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, that specializes in African and Caribbean ethnic crops. And so the farmer was showing them around the farm, showing them how to harvest callaloo and garden eggs and different African-centric crops. So that was part of our programming as well. And so these are some photos of what we've been up to and what we're planning to do more of. So on the upper left, you see this is from that trip that I just showed the photo of. That's Farmer John in the blue teaching one of our summer interns all about callaloo and how to harvest it. The bottom left is a group of homeschooled children at one of our partner farms, Carter Farms, which is a 5th generation farm out in Virginia. And Michael Carter Jr., the farmer there, is teaching them about the soil. In the middle up top there is a farm to table pop-up event that we hosted in November, where we had produce that was harvested right from the farm, right next to where you see the children behind them there. And we had some chef educators come and teach them how to make some vegetable wraps, so collard leaf wraps, which were delicious. Down below is one of our children who is learning how to transplant seedlings for a fall garden. And then on the right are our children here that are helping to prepare a bed for a new farm startup. So these are kind of examples of the things that we do in our community. And part of this project was to be able to have a set of resources that parents and teachers and other youth program providers could turn to easily to supplement and or integrate what people were reading into what they were doing in real life. So that was a lot of the impetus for our project. And yeah, I just, in closing, want to leave you with this cartoon that kind of came out of an educator, Rudine Sims Bishop, who's talking about mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors when it comes to curriculum materials and books. So I'll just read it. Books are mirrors, windows, sliding glass doors. They're also stepping stones, overcoats, anchors, springboards, escape hatches, quiet corners, warm blankets, flying carpets, and beacons to new readers. So with that, I will close and open up for Q&A.
Thank you for that. Yeah, does anyone have any questions for our presenters? I do have a question. As you know, you're teaching the kids, about soil health and planting and in farming, right? And this kind of this whole taking hold of their own kind of destiny, feeding themselves, and taking care of the earth. How do you see it continuing to progress and kind of build on this work? So I guess I'm thinking about it's like movie. How is it the continuity? How do you envision that?
I think that's a great question, and it's something that we are thinking about all the time about how we build programming that can build on each other. So, of course, we, with the pandemic, have been kind of forced to, at least a lot of us have been forced to kind of take a really deep look at what works and what doesn't work and what hasn't worked in our society, and just thinking about the different systems that we rely on that essentially broke down during the pandemic. So food was one of them, right? People were going to the stores and they couldn't get what they needed. And then, of course, thinking about what was safe, everybody turned to virtual learning, and then we thought about, okay, well, what are the impacts of virtual learning on our youth? And when they're our age, will they know how to relate to each other, because now they've learned through a screen, right? For example. So, and when we think about programming, we're thinking about how do we engage not just the child, but also their family members, siblings, grandparents, essentially, you know, the whole community. So we are thinking about, of course, in classroom activities, out of classroom activities, in school time, out of school time, on farm, off farm. So kind of thinking through how do we offer a wide range enough of items, whether it's something that we curate, whether it's something that we make available like this library so that it empowers caregivers and educators to use these tools with their own programming. We're thinking about how to engage people on different levels. So a good example is the farm to table pop-up. We had folks come who were super interested in making sure their children was able to learn something, learn a few cooking skills or knife skills, or thinking about how to put certain foods together in a recipe that tasted good, right? Other people were coming for the farmers market that was kind of an impromptu decision to have several on-site farms just collaborate on a farm stand right on site. Others just wanted some fresh air to get outside because we all know the healing benefits of nature. So, you know, an event like that, there's so many different entry points. And we have the little library there, then people can then begin to plan activities like story times or arts and crafts using nature, different kinds of activities to engage, you know, all the senses. And you know, that's not even considering all the connections that were made that then can spring up into future projects and future partnerships later on. So yeah, I think it's an ongoing question that we always ask, you know, how do we make sure this work is enduring and lasting, and, you know, thinking from a seed perspective, you know, we're always planting seeds. Whatever grows will depend on the environment, right? So if a child is in an environment where there's always food being grown, or there's always some kind of house plant, or some, you know, the parents or teachers are encouraging them to listen to the sounds of nature, or, you know, it's kind of different children will have different experiences based on what environment they're in. But if we have a lot of the tools that are there, that folks can access and to continue to plant the seed, I think we've done something to ensure that this programming and these kind of ideas continue throughout a child's life.
Great, thank you. We do have a question in the chat. How did you encourage children to want to participate?
A lot of it is also identifying parents that kind of share those value systems, and coming back to human nature and figuring out what draws people. So food is a big thing. And there's a direct link from fresh food to the farm. So if we can provide, for example, an event that features food and is low cost and is a family friendly event, then a parent or caregiver will bring a child, and then they'll see other children doing the same things. And peer pressure is something that we use a lot to encourage kids to just do what other kids are doing. And so if the environment is conducive to children participating, they will participate. And, you know, if we make sure the food is delicious, which it was, which child doesn't want to eat something that they prepared, right? And this is one of the ways that I know, as for me as a mother, I often invite my child to help in the kitchen so that she feels like she's playing a role in food prep, and she is more likely to eat what she prepared. So I think using food as an entry point is great. I think other children, like we said before, you know, like to see themselves in books. And so books can be a gateway for participation. There's a farm that we work with in Virginia that's trying to host a family event that has a moon bounce on the farm. So it's kind of thinking creatively about what children like to do, co-locating them with things that, you know, we would like them to also be interested in or curious about if that's not already a part of the family culture. And then building, you know, events and programming around that to encourage children to come and participate. Joy, do you want to speak some about how we get children to participate? Because I know you do a lot of this too through your work.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to add to what you're saying, circle back to your theme of representation matters. And it's not just in books, but it's all in all aspects of, the authors, in the books, or, the librarians, even, on the project, the social entrepreneurship, kids being able to see, folks involved in these different roles that are connected to agriculture, even if, farming isn't necessarily your thing. There are a lot of components and jobs that go into, that are related, auxiliary, jobs that are created. And I wanted to say, it was interesting too about the authors. I think one of the data points that Misty was tracking at one point is to the best that we could tell if the authors were of color or not, writing some of these different publications. And I know I was surprised to see that, it wasn't necessarily always the case. There were some, white authors of Black books. And I say that to mention, I say that because I think when we see the books on the shelves and you see Black characters, you assume that, it may be, Black authors or publishers behind it, and it's not necessarily the case. And so some of those funds are getting funneled, it's circulating outside of the community. So, as best as we can, I think, when we're purchasing these books or ordering these books for our institutions, to consider who are the authors and where the money is flowing through, to be able to continue to support, communities that need that support. So I just wanted to, it wasn't necessarily about the kids' involvement directly, but more indirectly.
Thank you for that. I do actually have another question. So how can informal learning spaces like libraries support the work that you're doing? Because you're doing the work, kind of having events on the farms, and things, but it seems like there are things that public libraries can do, whether it's collection development or having programming that's kind of, related to, tying it back to the farms, but having it, having it in the library. How can this kind of thing be supported?
Misty or Joy, you want to take that?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, invite librarians, come out. Misty came out to the farm, and you get involved. And I think it's, getting involved, sharing it with your networks. We put the links to the chats and the things that are going on, so stay current on the events. But come out. It's contagious. It's good vitamin D. It's good community building, and then you just start to hear about the projects and that are going. So it's so much work. Happening in this community, and I think you can't help but want to support it. So, so that's one thing I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And that question made me think about something I worked on when I was in the public library setting. At that time, there was no entity such as OurSpace, but there was the what's it called? Forgetting what it's called. It's
It'll come back to you.
yeah,
It'll come
but
to
it
you.
was it's forgetting what it's called, but it's the entity where they connect with the communities. Not 4-H. We did a 4-H
extension.
also. Yes, the extension programs, right. We someone from the extension office came to the public library setting, and they put together programming for youth. So he had fitness trackers, he had small food demonstrations that they participated in the library setting, and then he also set up an opportunity for them to come out on their own outside of the library setting. So there was a series of programming that we conducted, the library and the extension program locally. So So yeah, that's another way for libraries to be involved in the work, continuing and participating outside of just collection development. And also, I would encourage libraries and librarians to support self-publishers and independent publishers in your branches. I remember getting a lot of requests for independent publishers and authors to showcase their work in the library setting. And there were times we weren't available to do it, but eventually we developed those opportunities because there was such a big request to do so. And as I was mentioning during the demonstration, some of those independent authors and self-published works are some of the best ones in there. They're ethnically appropriate. They speak in the language that these families and children are familiar with. And as Joy was mentioning, the money will go directly to those people so they can continue to develop additional works. So there are plenty of opportunities just with a little brainstorming and browsing around in other areas and seeing what other people are doing. Libraries can always be involved.
Yeah, and I don't know, who's on the call that has a library that has unutilized space. I know Joy is involved with some of this work through in Bloom, thinking about actually growing some food on the library grounds as a way to teach children, teach families that come, about where food comes from. I think that's a huge opportunity that if certain librarians are very passionate about this topic and they can, talk to leadership and figure out a way to partner with some community organizations to start a garden, that would be another way. And, off season, there's several ways to engage children in terms of, what is the environment doing when when the sun is when the length of the day is not as long, we are planning, we're doing different things, but you can still be learning about the life cycle, the soil and the earth, and thinking about programming that's in the series. So for example, maybe in the springtime you have a workshop around starting seeds and you give kids a seed packet and some material to be able to start that in their home, and they go to take home with them, and then you have them bring it back, and later in the season to see how the seedling has grown, and then maybe later on it's a partnership with an actual farm to have the kids go out and actually put those seedlings in the ground. So there are ways that library programming can incorporate what's happening inside books and make it real for youth and families. And so I encourage folks to think creatively about how that can look. And of course, like Misty said, food demonstrations, cooking demonstrations are always a hit. Just connected to what they're reading and what they are experiencing at home. And that I think is a great starting point.
And thank you for mentioning the outdoor growing space, Ita, because I also think that applies to the indoor space as well, to be able to offer programming as organizations are building their resources and trying to reach more folks. It really is helpful when libraries offer free space as opposed to paid space, and because that can really determine on what organizations are able to afford. Oftentimes they're run by volunteers when they have to come up with money to pay for a room rental on top of it. It makes it a real challenge. So if you have influence in that department in your library, I would encourage you to ask for free community space, indoors and outdoors.
Well, this has been great. I think we've gotten a lot of food for thought. Oh, okay. So thank you so much to our presenters, to Aita, Joy, Misty. Thank you so much for this wonderful webinar. I am putting now the link for there it is, the link for please fill out the survey. The link for the survey is in the chat, And, you know, you fill it out, you can get your MLACEs. And with that, we will let everyone get to their afternoons. So thank you so much again to our presenters, Joy, Ada, Misty. And
Thank you, April.
you are so
Thanks,
welcome.
April.
And we'll be putting the recording for this webinar on the class page, so it will be available for future viewing. In addition to resources that Aita has sent to me, we have a resource page as well as and a how-to page, correct?
Yeah, so there will be a handout that explains how to search that library. So basically what Misty was able to demo, and then we've already sent the links to the library itself, the online library, but also I wanted to leave some three videos actually in thinking about mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. I'm trying to see if I can put those here in the chat, or Joy, if you have those for future viewing, just in thinking about the communities that you are in, the communities that you serve, and how we relate to books and curriculum materials.
Excellent.
Because
And
I'm
what?
in the midst of applying for residency right now.
Sorry.
Grammarly.
Sorry. Oh, okay. Anywho, okay. So we'll take those links and we can also put those onto a sheet so that they will be they'll be available on the class page. All right. Thank you again so much, and thank you to our participants for coming, and everyone have a great afternoon.